Welcome back. This is Genesis with Sozo Education and Beauty Supply, and we are here with the Soap Challenge Club for May. And this was hosted by Jennifer, and she's done the rebranding, so she is now the soap artist instead of Jennifer's Handmade Soap. But I have been following her for a while, so this was super exciting to be able to get her guidance with all of the mathy things in this particular challenge. So I have decided to do the advanced category, and we'll get into kind of the rules with that in a little bit, but I want to discuss the colors that I'm using right now. So in my main batch right there, I decided to add in winter rose mica, and it was 2 teaspoons total. And that was just because I wanted it to be in everything. So instead of separating it out, I just chose to do it that way. And then for my purple, it was a total of 2 teaspoons of Queen for a Day. And then the pink, I wanted it to have a little bit of an orange to it. So I added 1 teaspoon of Material Girl and 4 microscoops of the Neon Deep Orange. And then for my fragrance, I decided to do amber and lavender from Fizz Fairy, but because I no longer get fragrances from them and I didn't have enough, I decided to make another combination of ones I had from Nature's Garden. I used the French lavender and amber waters. And since the French lavender did have a vanilla content in it, I used just about like 3/4 of that to 1 1/4 of the amber waters for the rest of the amount of ounces needed for the fragrance. So with my main soap batter, I did use a goat's milk base, which kind of bit me in the butt a little bit for this. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But I want to be clear that I did not add any texturizing ingredients into my soap. It was kind of a failure on my own that led to what you can see as like texture within it. I did add silk, kaolin clay, colloidal oats, and sodium lactate to my mixture. So the rules for this, for the advanced category, is that you had to use 2 individual colors in order to create 7 layers or 9 layers, but I chose to do 7 for the gradient. And she did provide the math for us, like I had discussed. So the little piece of paper that you see next to me is of me actually looking at all of that math. And I did pretty good, except for there was one pot where she had set a measurement in the video because I was listening to it as I was doing this. And I went with whatever measurement that she said instead of the measurement I was supposed to put in there. So thankfully I had made a little bit extra of this in order to try to do a piped top. And I wanted to have some extra to try to do some flowers or something like that just for me practicing afterwards. So I was able to get the rest of them to be the correct ratio because I had that little bit of a buffer in there. Thank goodness. And with this one, this category, you can include top embellishments to elevate your design, but they must be composed of at least 75% of the colors from your gradient. So for me, both of those colors like were from my gradient, so I didn't have any problem with that. And then we were allowed to sprinkle glitter on top. So I took the same color of mica that I put inside of all of the mixture, which was the winter rose mica, and I sprayed that on top of my piped topping in order to give it just a little bit of a shimmer within it. So the only reason why I did the advanced category is just specifically so I could try to practice piping because that was last month's challenge and I still haven't completed that yet. So I wanted to be able to kind of have a second chance at that before I really take the big step and do my next one. So I think my layers came out pretty good for this. They are not totally and completely straight because I did not spend a massive amount of time in between each one of them. But I did decide to kind of do something that she had done in the videos, and that was add my fragrance in to each color. But then after I mixed that first color for a little while, I added it into the next one, and then mixed everything for a little while and then added into the next one to try to ensure that the acceleration was going to be spread out a little bit. But even though I'm using a floral, and supposedly florals have a tendency to accelerate in soap, this still was not a massive acceleration. So I wanted to make sure I spread them all out, and I wanted to still try to pour it when it was fairly fluid, but not like so fluid that when I added the next one, it wouldn't be set up enough so the next one would fall through it. And I feel like I did fairly good with that. I did bang down my mold a lot to try to get that layer to be more even before you added the second one in. And I'm okay with this. I don't have any issues with this because aside from literally pouring one layer and then waiting until it's like hardened and then doing the next layer completely liquid, which would just take a whole lot of time, I feel like this was a good compromise in between that. And I'm very happy with the piped topping that I did on top as well, just to give it a little bit extra. If I had a thought about this ahead of time, I would have actually, once I got my measurements for my mold, I would have just subtracted 200 grams from that. So that way, the piped top would have been actually like sitting down inside of my mold a little bit, because this one is a tall and skinny. So it's already 4 inches tall. And then with the added piped on top, it's like 5 inches, maybe a little bit taller, like where the peaks are. So, lesson learned with that. I will just set aside some of my mix to be able to do a piped top. So they will never exceed more than the 4 inches, essentially. So with this, I was super excited to be able to do that. And these are the flowers that I did with the extra batter that I had. And lesson learned from last time, I sprayed them with the isopropyl alcohol after I did them. And then that one, I sprayed some of the mica on top as well. I wanted to see if this would help with the soda ash anymore and kind of what the result was. And then I also decided to steam the tops of those when I steamed the top of the rest of my soap. And I think that is the way that I'm going to go about when I try to do my other piped soap again, because it worked out really well. So here I try to slow some down a little bit just so you can get a better view of what those layers look like. I did forget about when you're cutting to take away the excess soap on the cutter before you make your next cut. And therefore some of them have some like cut lines into them. So I have to remember to write that down, essentially to remind myself to always clean off that wire in between the cuts to prevent that. And then if you can see the little chunks that are on the inside of there, that is because I did not add my lye water slow enough or add my lye to my goat's milk slow enough. And I don't know if they burnt or like what. I think those little fatty parts. And I never use my immersion blender. I just use the other like whiskey whippy blender. So I wonder if I had used my immersion blender, if those would have actually gotten ground out of there or not. But I've been back and forth on whether or not I want to strain the goat's milk. And I think this would definitely be a good reason to strain it and just kind of push through any of the fatty pieces from the goat's milk, because you do want them in there, right? That's the point of using goat's milk. So just I need to navigate through that to see how I can make that part better. And with these, I did start to bevel, but they were still too soft. This was after 2 days. So I decided to wait a little bit longer to do the final beveling on all of them. And it was definitely more crisp and a way better idea for sure. I also have practice with using a microfiber towel and 90% alcohol to spray the tops of the soap with and just kind of like massage it to see if I could get them to be a little bit smoother. If you have any tips or tricks on how to get the face of your soap to be smoother, please share them with me. I would surely appreciate it. And if you would like to compete in the Soap Challenge Club, head to soapchallengeclub.com. Hope to see you there. Bye.